before we get started with the actual content, which is emotional intelligence in a nutshell, what I'd like to do is just take a couple of minutes to ground through mindful breathing. So I'll ask you just to drop your head into a comfortable position and close your eyes if that's comfortable for you. And we're just going to take 10 or 12 breaths with the sole focus of making the inhalation and the exhalation the same quality, meaning the inhalation is smooth and takes whatever time it is for you comfortable, and then the exhalation, we're going to do that in reverse. So however long it takes you to breathe in smoothly, you're going to make your out breath the same. And I recommend doing in-breath through the nose and exhalation through the mouth. So counting to yourself. Just a smooth inhalation and a smooth exhalation through the mouth. And with every exhalation, just dropping in a little more. So letting gravity however long your breaths are, just count to yourself 3 more. And when you're relaxed and ready and present, come into our team's room. So welcome to Emotional Intelligence in a Nutshell, and I've put a little little saying up in the sharing. I'm just reading it out to you. So this is kind of the bedrock, if you like, of any kind of personal growth. And it simply says the degree to which a person can grow is directly proportional to the amount of truth that they can accept about themselves without running away. And so this session today, and I'll just close that down, this session today is focusing really on self-honesty with the traits of emotional intelligence. And I'll give you an example that's personal for me. I did an emotional intelligence test some time ago, probably around my late 20s, so a little while ago. And I was well established in my career, and I guess got pretty good results with school and with my career. So in terms of IQ, I was reasonably high. And I thought that that would reflect in the results that I would get from the emotional intelligence testing. And I was very wrong. So much to my consternation is the results of the little test that I did said that I was lower emotional intelligence, a couple of the domains in emotional intelligence, than I would have liked to think myself to be. And so it set me on a little quest to go, okay, well, you know, I'm lower in some cases than average. Why is that? And what is it that I can do about it. So it set me on a little bit of a path of investigating emotional intelligence and its ties to self-awareness, because the only way that we can grow is if we're self-aware of where our starting position is. Does that make sense? So I'm going to share a PowerPoint just to go through the basic information on emotional intelligence following one of the authors, so Daniel Goleman. There have been a couple of people that have different models, if you like. We're going to look at one in particular. So I'll share that screen, and I believe it takes a little bit just to flick over to there. So hopefully you can see the title up here of emotional intelligence in a nutshell. Is everyone, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yep, terrific. Okay, so what we're going to cover today, and it's going to be kind of fast because there's a lot of content in this. So this is kind of in a nutshell, it's just an overview or a summary of emotional intelligence. So a quick welcome and introduction, which I've already done. Normally we would introduce ourselves as part of this program. However, just for the limitations of time, we'll move fairly quickly through it and allow some time at the end for questions and answers. So we're going to have a look at what is emotional intelligence, the 4 pillars of emotional intelligence according to Daniel Goleman, have a look at some resources and other things that we can use for ourselves. And I know that there's a lot of teachers who are registered for this session, so many of these resources can be applied to self. Obviously, walk your own path first and then share that with students. And then we'll allow a little bit of time at the end, just if you have any questions or comments. So first of all, EQ and IQ are quite different things. So on the right-hand side of this screen, you'll see that the intelligence quotient, which is the one that we're most familiar with, because in many ways we're used to being tested on our intelligence. So our intelligence in maths, our intelligence in English, whatever it might be. So the IQ serves as a marker for scholarly achievement or the capacity for intricate thinking. So someone who has a high IQ is going to be an excellent problem solver, for instance. EQ, on the other hand, is the ability to recognize, understand and manage your own emotions, as well as discern and respond appropriately to the emotions of others. I believe that many people have no experience, let's say, in recognizing their own emotions and the triggers that send them off. So having some emotional intelligence and developing it is a really good thing, because it's all about the ability to motivate yourself, to regulate your own emotions, to empathize with others, and to sustain a positive outlook, particularly when things are a little intense. And EQ has been recognized as a more crucial predictor of success in life than IQ is. And I've got a couple of fairly recent studies that I'll show you in a moment. So here's a couple of quick studies, and I've just put the dates in to show that these are far more recent, if you like, than Goleman's studies on emotional intelligence and the formation of his model. So basically it said that students that had a high emotional intelligence performed better academically. The second one is that they also experience better mental health, resilience and life satisfaction. Well, we'd all like a little piece of that. So emotional intelligence skills such as regulation and social awareness were found to promote well-being. And then the last one talks about leadership. So people who have a high emotional intelligence are also known to be very effective leaders. So there's a lot of academic reasons why emotional intelligence is important. And it's up to us then to decide what it is that we're personally going to develop in these 4 domains that we'll talk about. So if we just have a read of this little, I like this little story. If you're holding a cup of coffee and someone comes along and bumps you, making you spill your coffee everywhere, why did you spill the coffee? And the answer might be because somebody bumped into me. What really happened is you spilled the coffee because there was coffee in your cup. If there had been tea in your cup, you would have spilled tea. Whatever is inside your cup is what will spill out. And therefore, when life comes along and shakes you up, which it inevitably will, what's inside you will come out. It's easy to fake it until you get rattled. So ask yourself, when life gets tough, what spills over? Is my cup filled with gratitude, joy, peace, and humility, or is it filled with things like harsh words and retaliation? Life provides the cup and you choose how to fill it. So the reason I put this here is because emotional intelligence, when we're operating normally in our routine and everything's going along smoothly, we can all appear to be highly emotionally intelligent. It's when there's road bumps or difficulties or overwhelm, for example, it's in those difficult times when we spill our cup, we find out what happens, right? And so emotional intelligence is really about having a look at what's in my cup. Is it in my cup for a good reason? Can I work through it and determine whether I can be function in a way that is more harmonious? So, according to Daniel Goleman, there are 4 pillars of emotional intelligence, and the first one, and they do kind of progress from the more person-centered to the more relationship-centered. So the first one is self-awareness, and then we work towards when I'm aware of what's going on in me, how I feel, what my triggers are, and so forth. Then can I manage or moderate myself, my reactions, and so forth? I then might move to social awareness, which is the people around me, and then relationship management. And we're going to go through each of those with a little bit of detail. And I do apologise because at the moment all I can see is the full screen of this. So if you do put your hand up, I won't see it. Shira, can I ask you if anyone does have any questions along the way, just to jump in and let me know?
I will.
So the first one is self-awareness, and I'm not going to read right through this for you because I know you can all read, but this is all about recognizing your own emotions. And as a general statement, I would say that many of us are better at suppressing our emotions than we are being aware of what they are and how they're exhibiting. So self-awareness is actually the foundation, if you like, of emotional intelligence. I can prattle on all about how I operate in a social situation, for example. If I have no understanding of what's going on in me, then all of that other stuff is going to be theory. It's going to be of the head rather than of the heart. So a couple of things is recognizing and understanding your emotions, your thoughts and your behaviors, and sometimes how they're linked. So for example, I might wake up with a thought that's a little bit negative, and it may be something like, oh, it's going to be a really busy day today. I'm going to be so tired by the end of the day. And that thought then sends you into a little bit of an emotional, feeling overwhelmed state that may then affect your behavior, rushing around and perhaps snapping at people. So I'm just going to move on to some examples. So on the left-hand side of this screen is some examples of people that are exhibiting a lower emotional intelligence in terms of their self-awareness. And the ones on the right are people who are developing their self-awareness and becoming better at it. So anyone like to speak up about their own examples, either when they've exhibited lower emotional intelligence and when they've developed up? Is anyone prepared to share? No? I will be upfront and say that all three examples that are there are examples that I've experienced and at times still experience. And often it can depend on circumstances. So, for example, in a career situation, I may not blame others in a career sense, and certainly my partner would say that I do blame him when we're having a conflict, even today at times. So it would be, and it is very important for me and anyone else, if you catch yourself doing some of those things that show a lower level of self-awareness, is that you have a look and say, do you recognize your own personal stress? I know when I'm going most likely to argue is when I'm most stressed and feeling overwhelmed by certain tasks. Maybe you're the same. Maybe you have different triggers that can make you anxious or upset or angry. And then reflecting on reactions. Often we do what's called projecting, is that we're experiencing an emotion and we assume that the other person is too, and we project our own feelings and judgments on others about that. Okay. So the second one, once we understand what's going on with us, we have an opportunity to regulate and control. And the word control is one that I maybe changed to regulate, and manage is a little bit better than control, especially in stressful or challenging situations. So this is all about what comes out of your cup. So are you able to stay calm and composed in situations where there is conflict, where there's frustration, or when you're overwhelmed or anxious? Are you able to do that? People who do manage their emotions well tend to be more effective and in both a personal and a professional setting, simply because others kind of know that they've got control of themselves. They're managing their own systems really well. So it's a key skill, that self-management one, particularly in high pressure environments. And I think it's fairly safe to say that many of us are in those high pressure environments now. So a couple of examples then of someone with lower and someone with more advanced self-management. And there's a couple of examples there. Lashing out. I think many of us have experienced where we've had a crappy day, for example, and come home and one little infraction that happens at home that goes other than to plan, and suddenly we're snapping out. Impulsive distractions is also another one. So that can be anything from becoming a workaholic to shopping to substance use. It's really, and entertainment, constant entertainment. And I think we're getting a lot towards that now. If you have a look walking down the street and in any restaurant, how many people are actually being entertained, if you like, by their device than engaging. And then often people overreact. So, and that's one of my things at times, is I do tend to overreact, quite volatile. So when I'm overreacting, I now know myself well enough to know, ride that wave before I respond. So in order to do that, is controlling my impulses, is I might go for a little walk or go to the bathroom or wash my hands or something, so that I can avoid responding when I know after I come down from the wave that I will have made a mountain out of a molehill. So more advanced skills is managing your frustration, controlling those impulses, and then being able to respond calmly, particularly when there's nothing that you can do about the situation. I used to get quite a lot of I use road annoyance more than road rage. When somebody would do something, wrong in front of me, or the traffic was moving too slow. And I now have no issues with that at all, because I know that I make the same mistakes at times. So I'm much calmer watching other people do those things. So the third area is social awareness, or understanding the emotions of others. And in order to understand the emotions of others, you actually have to be a good listener, obviously, and that is to listen with intention, so that you can focus on the other person rather than what your response or your judgment about the situation or circumstances is. So it's having the empathy to put yourself in somebody else's position and feel their circumstances and perspectives, so that you can communicate with them and interact with them in a manner that's helpful. So all of those things, empathy, active listening, and I think that's one of the skills that we could all do better in, is active listening. It helps to build trust and rapport, and that's for both personal and professional relationships. So, professionally, having rapport with someone that you can have an effective conversation, acknowledge how one another is feeling and what their perspective is, and then come to a mutually agreeable solution, is all about what social awareness is. And that can be also with family, right? So, and particularly children. So understanding what's going on for them requires some fairly intense listening at times. So a couple of things, again, left-hand side is some things that might show up if your social awareness is lower, and on the right is if it's higher. So missing non-verbal cues. So people distracting themselves, you're having a conversation with them and they're off doing the dishes, or they're rolling their eyes, or they're not making eye contact, or whatever it is. Many people will plow through and miss those cues, where somebody who is socially aware will notice those things. Disregarding other people's feelings and interrupting. So they're all kind of about really listening. So listening with your ears and listening with the energy that's between you, so that you can catch the non-verbal cues. And so the opposite, when we are good at that, is that we do notice the body language, the tone, the energy of the room. And the last one, according to Daniel Goleman, is relationship management. So that's building better connections. So using our emotional awareness, both our own, our empathy for others, and our ability to manage ourselves in order to build meaningful connections and then manage conflicts. So there are some similarities with this one to the previous one. And in fact, all four of those pillars that Goleman's identified, there is some overlapping with them anyway. So in relationship management, it's about communication. So listening is obviously part of that. Fostering collaboration and mutual respect, and strengthening connections by building trust, loyalty, and emotional connections with others, as well as motivating, inspiring, and you guys can read that. So some examples. Someone who's lower in this pillar is going to escalate personal arguments. So that's sort of the person, you bring up one issue and then they fire three back of the ammunition of past infractions, if you like. So they escalate by throwing other things back. Ignoring the needs of other people, and then passive aggressive behaviour, right? Somebody who is more advanced in this is going to be able to resolve conflicts, in fact, be a mediator, because they can see the perspective of other people. It helps nurture friendships and build bonds with people. So I'm just going to stop the share for a minute there and check in if anyone has any questions they'd like to drop in. Nope. Shira,
Anyone?
you're on. There we go. Shira.
Marco. Marco raised his hand. Donna.
My question here is because whenever you are having some healthy argument, whether it's politics or whether it's someone personal, you're having a conversation. Some people actually can't help but to gaslight things. You know, nowadays gaslighting is becoming a popular. It's a trend. I don't know what's happening in the world, but what can you say about those people who gaslight? Would you also think they have quite a low? Because upon listening to your explanation for those with high and low emotional intelligence, I think they might fall under the low emotional intelligence. Would you agree?
Yes, I would agree. And there's a couple of things that you brought up there. One is gaslighting kind of falls into the relationship and the social pillars, the two last one, in terms of the action. It's also based on the self-awareness and self-management, because their method of self-management, their self-awareness is they may be feeling a low self-esteem, right? And so their method of managing that is to gaslight somebody else. So while it shows up in the social and relationship area, it's actually about their self-awareness and their self-management as well. And I guess that you mentioned also, Marco, about arguments. And having an argument or a debate is actually a healthy and normal thing to do. How do you know when you're in an argument and demonstrating good emotional intelligence or poor emotional intelligence? It's going to be in your reactions, right? So I might be able to sit and have a debate with you over A being the best way to approach it rather than B, for example. And we're having a conversation back and forth, and we can end up disagreeing with one another if we like. If we're both communicating as grown-up adults in a reasonable, logical, and respectful manner, then we are exhibiting high levels of emotional intelligence. If we're ranting and raving and pulling out every bit of ammo to get ourselves to be right and, accusing other people and gaslighting, as you say, then you can fairly safely say that we're kind of down the other end of the emotional intelligence continuum. And it is a continuum. Thank you.
Right.
That was
Thank you
a
so much, Donna. Yeah.
great question.
Thanks, Marco. Anybody else in the group? How about for me, Donna? I do know some people, or some of my friends are actually like this. It's like they have this kind of mindset that if they don't like me, this is me. Well, if they don't accept me, then I'm not going to be with them. Is that something that also um falls under emotional intelligence where you are at? Like you don't care if they accept you or not, or something like that.
Well, it speaks to being very centered in yourself. Okay. And it doesn't speak to anything about whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. If you are comfortable with yourself and the things in your world are moving smoothly and you're able to interact on lots of different levels, and there's someone or someone that says they don't like you like that, that's okay. So they'll go find another friend and so will you.
Thanks, Donna. Because yeah, I do have those kind of friends that they think that you can't please everyone, right? So if they don't like you, then you can have other friends, other people out there. Okay, don't
Yeah.
force yourself to them. Okay.
Well, I'll stay off my people pleasing soapbox. I've got quite a lot to say about that. And I'll jump. Susie, you've got a question?
Oh, no, you just made me wonder, because I still find that I experience a bit, not road rage in the morning, like on the way to work, for example, but you've just, like, I do get really irritated by other people driving around me, and if somebody gets in front of me, but it's actually made me question the psychology behind that. Like, why do I, like, and I actually have to make myself just stay calm and yeah, like I was actually just trying to question, why do I feel that towards that? Is
Well,
it a
and that's
control thing? Is it because I feel that I don't know. I really am seriously just wondering about that.
Well, it's a great question, right? Because that speaks to self-awareness. So understanding why you get irritated by that. And it may come down to that you like things to be on time and in order and structured. And when you're thrown out of that routine, that actually stresses your nervous system, right? So being late in traffic might do that. So understanding that you like to control situations, and that's your, let's say your automatic coding, right? Is to say, all right, well, I can keep doing that. I can keep trying to control it and being irritated every time it goes out of control, or I can work out a way that says, do I actually need to control this? And me getting irritated, this is what worked for me in traffic, Susie, is me getting irritated at the traffic and the length of time is nothing I can do about it, right? What I'm actually irritated about is that I'm got the order of my day is going to change if I'm late, right? And then I'm sometimes beating myself up and saying I should have known about peak hour traffic and left earlier, right? Now, once I identify that little cauldron, I can go, well, there's nothing I can do about it. So I may as well put on some decent music and just drive slowly as the traffic allows me. Great question, though. Whenever we're irritated, upset, whenever our emotional being, if you like, goes wobbly, right, or goes out of whack for us. So that might look like, you're feeling lethargic, depressed, and procrastinating. You might be angry, you might be upset, you might be ecstatic, right, is another one. Whenever we go out of equilibrium, the best question we can ask ourselves is, why is this happening to me? And then what can I do about it? And that's what emotional intelligence is all about. So I'm just going to jump on and share again. Can you see the little egg with the question sign now?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. So what I'd like you to do in the chat is to, for each of those pillars of emotional intelligence, and I'll go back to that. Let me just stop sharing. So the 4 pillars, for the first one, which is self-awareness, in the chat, or if you're watching this recording on a piece of paper, write down the things about yourself that you know will make you angry, sad, and joyful. Okay, so what are the things that you know? We're looking for triggers here, if you like. So what triggers me into anger, into sadness, and into joy? We've got some comments coming in here. While we're waiting for the comments, What triggers me into anger is any version of being told it's our policy, especially when a policy makes no sense. What can trigger me into sadness is if I think back onto events in my past that were quite sad, like the death of my father, for example. If I focus on that, that can elicit sadness, a feeling of sadness. And what brings me or triggers joy is fun, freedom. So one of the things that gives me joy about my job is that it is very flexible in time and it's very flexible in what I'm actually doing. And doing these types of sessions brings me joy. So a couple of things here. So Sue's self-absorption, selfishness and cruelty, okay, is anger. Miscommunication, Arlene, you've put in, is that the anger or sad one for miscommunication? You'll have to unmute.
Yeah, no, I missed adding anger on messy spaces and miscommunication. Yeah, that ends up being a bit of anger.
Yeah. And notice how some of these things are quite big and some of these things that I'm seeing on the chat are smaller, if you like, and they can still elicit the same thing. So we've got cruelty is something that would make someone angry. And then another thing is when no one seems to be paying attention to what I'm saying. So that's a smaller thing, right? So then we have a choice in terms of, if I feel angry when no one's paying attention to me, now I can work with that and say, okay, well, why are they not paying attention to me? And how can I make myself heard and received so that I can drop that anger? Or I could approach it and say, well, no one's paying attention to me, their loss.
Actually, that's a trigger for me as well, I have to say.
Yeah.
If you're talking to someone and they're not paying any attention to you and not listening to you, that frustrates me too.
Yeah. And Jennifer's put change for change's sake, right? So I'm guessing, Jennifer, that maybe has something to do with the use of your time and you feeling that your time is being wasted. And we've got a bad argument is sadness, feeling defeated and not knowing what else to do, right? So that's a hopeless feeling, is it, Arlene? Yeah. And we know that those sorts of feelings, those hopelessness feelings, can kind of come with lots of different triggers, really, right? It could just be spinning your wheels on a project or spinning your wheels with a relationship, for example, that leaves you to, I've tried everything and now there's nothing else I can do. What do I do? Right. So that feeling of hopelessness. Yeah. So some great responses in there. So the next one for our little chat is in terms of management, right? So self-management is the second one. The first one's self-awareness. Second one is self-management. I would like you to put in the chat 2 things that you believe you could self-manage better. 2 things that you could self-manage better. And I gave you one example is I said to you that I ride a wave, so I'm quite volatile when something will come up, and I ride my own wave of volatility until it settles down before I respond. Right. So for me, that's a constant work in progress because I'm familiar with and perhaps even, let's say, conditioned. It's an automatic response for me to go into volatile, deal with the thing, drop off and move on. It's a particularly ineffective thing if I'm engaging with others, though, because none of us really like to engage with out of control volatility. And I'll be upfront and say that's what I was. It was one of the reasons why I got a lower mark, if you like, for emotional intelligence than what I would have preferred. Yeah. So patience. Yeah. So asking for help. Yeah. So delaying deep breaths before reacting. So Jennifer, you have a similar wave of emotional response, and often people that do. Who else has quite a distinct, emotional wave? And you've watched yourself. No one else. It's just you and I then, Jennifer. Yeah. Stay quiet. Yeah, sad, write poems. Susie, yeah, some great things in there. So being impulsive, making bad decisions. So that self-awareness then brings us to self-management, is how do you manage those impulses? And how do you manage the bad decisions that I'm guessing are an outcome of those impulsive decisions, of that impulsivity? Is that right, Adrian? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so just I think being aware of uh trying to lessen or reduce being impulsive, trying to I think first thing that we did, like deep breaths, uh and not try to react immediately on some things. I think that's something that I could manage better.
Yeah. So what sort of things are you impulsive about?
Um there's a lot. Even the small things like some I don't know, some drivers that I meet, let's say, uh, speaking of road rage, even just watching sports or TV shows that I don't see or I just don't like their reactions, so that
Yeah.
triggers me sometimes too. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think sometimes I get irritated right away. Uh, mm, Triggers me to do some bad decisions on some things. So yep,
Yeah.
trying to avoid being impulsive and yeah, probably take some take some time to manage myself first.
Yeah. And work out some strategies that, knowing that you're impulsive by nature and it's led you no place good, right? Then we have to say, if I want to lead myself someplace good, that's something that I would be beneficial for me, is to manage my impulses. And the thing about impulses is, or any of these management things, in order to develop them, you need to confront them, right? Meaning, if I choose to develop patience because one of my triggers, and therefore has I get impatient, I get snappy, then my relationships suffer, da 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 da, right? So if I choose to be more patient and develop that in myself, for sure I'm going to get situations that will demand it. So it's nothing that we can just go, oh yes, I'm going to be more patient, right? Is we test and we build the muscle of what we know to be areas that are unproductive for us. And in terms of impulsiveness, that could look like I'm impulsive and I show that in food. I'm late night snacker, I raid the fridge, da 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 da. That's impulsive, right? Sorry, Shira. I obviously hit a nerve there, did I? Impulsiveness can be in spending. Impulsiveness can be in committing to invitations that you really don't want to go to, right? Impulsiveness can show itself lots of different ways. So the way that you build the muscle of being more contained, reserved, and able to discern what's going to work well for you or not, is to catch all of your impulsiveness, because what you do in one thing, you generally do in all, right? So next time I'm just going to do this, right? So it takes a little bit of the spontaneity out, because if you're impulsive and you say, I'm just going to jump in the car and go down to wherever and do whatever, and that's an impulse you have, removing that, developing that containment is going to say, all right, that's what I want to do. I'm going to sit and work for an hour. I'm going to have a conversation, or I'm going to have lunch before I do it. So you're putting a little bit of space between the mental impulse and the action that comes from it, right? And therefore the decisions, Adrian.
Saying no is such a hard thing to do at first, but I'll tell you what, it's such an empowering feeling when you learn to be able to say no to doing things. And I just find that it just gives you such a huge feeling of freedom when you learn to do and say no.
And see, here's a good thing about learning to say no, just as it relates to emotional intelligence, is often we say yes to something, maybe because it's out of obligation, and we shove down our feeling or our thoughts of, oh, I really don't want to go, but I will, right? We shove that down. So we're already showing a little bit of lower self-awareness if we're shoving things down. And then when we shove them down, and the next thing that comes up is someone wants some more time of yours, you're already at that snapping point because you've done something that you really didn't want to do and you failed to listen to yourself, right? And so then it becomes, oh, I'm snappy, I came to this, whatever it was, this party, invitation, event, didn't really want to be here, I'm kind of, a bit annoyed just even being here and wasting my time. And then you can imagine the rest of the interactions as part of doing yes when you actually meant no impacts all of those areas, the socially, interpersonal, or relationship, right? Because that's the tea or the coffee coming out of the cup. And when you say no because you mean no, what you're doing is making sure that your cup is clean.
The only exception to that, though, for me is the gym. So many times I don't want to go, but I make sure I go. So that's probably the one exception. But I know how good I'll feel when I go, after I go.
And that's self-motivation, Sue. So that belongs in the second pillar, okay, is, we've got self-awareness, number one, self-management is the next. Motivation is part of that, is motivating yourself when you least feel like it, because it's always when you least feel like it. As I said to you, when everything's going smoothly, we're all fine. We can look like we're emotionally intelligent. And then watch someone lose their lolly when they've built this stuff up and suppressed it. Yeah. So I'm just going to share the last little bit with you. And so there are a couple of resources. One, if you do a search, a Google search for free emotional intelligence test, you'll get lots of them pop up for you. A couple of them that I like is, one is Truity and the other one is My Framework. So you can just do a little free online test with those. They'll ask you questions, you answer them, and then they'll give you a score or a graph or something. And I'm going to upload an emotional intelligence self-assessment in the chat for you at the end. And that's a document that goes through the 5 categories. So what you'll notice is that Daniel Goleman took 2 of the 5, if you like, and bunched them together. You'll see once you have a look through, is for you to self-rate. And one of the things that I would recommend is really be honest about each of these sections as the statement applies to you across a range of different circumstances, interactions with different people, and so forth. be really honest with yourself, because that's the self-awareness piece that then allows you to go, okay, well, at the moment, you know, I'd probably rate myself about a 4. And I choose differently. I choose to develop that, you know, up to a 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah. So I'll upload that little checklist for you in just a moment. And for all of you here, emotional intelligence is the bedrock of our Certificate 3 in personal empowerment. So I'm going to do a little promo for that. I believe we're going to be starting a new course in January next year. There's another one. There's one going at the moment that's the units are moving towards the end. So if you are interested in starting the Certificate 3 in personal empowerment in January, please give us a call or check our website out. There's some enrolment or expressions of interest forms that you can fill out there. So we are 8 minutes, so that was relatively well timed. And I'll finish off just by asking each of you that was here is, what did you learn today that you can take away with you and do differently for your own benefit? Right? What did you learn today that you can take away for your own benefit? And I'm going to go through just the screen as I see it. And the first person, I'll tell you the order so that you can prepare what you're going to say. We've got Shira, Marco, Susan, Adrian, Arlene, and Jennifer. So Shira, for you, what did you learn today that you can take away for your own benefit?
Actually, what really is an aha moment for me is that there are 4 pillars that I have to focus on if I am going to check my emotional intelligence. And those 4 pillars are equally important. So I have to assess myself in each of those pillars. What are my triggers? What are the things that make me happy? How can I manage depending on what pillar it is that I'm looking at? So I have to look at it as a whole and not as just one. So they should be one whole for it to work for me. So that's my aha moment here.
Yeah,
Right.
because they're interconnected. Yeah.
Yes. So it's like a house, and then if you miss one pillar, then it's not gonna be a house. All right. In a way, it's not gonna be strong enough. All right.
Yeah.
So yes, that's just it for me, Dana, and thank you for that one.
Terrific. Thank you, Shira. Marco.
Well, I highly actually agree with Sheila, because most of the times I only look at one side of things, especially the self-awareness part. Because I'm always thinking before I always think I have to be self-aware because I think it might influence other pillars. But with the way Sheila actually worded it, I think I agree with her. I totally agree with her.
That they're interconnected and it's
Yes.
working on all of them. Yeah. And so if you
Yes.
find something in yourself that you dislike, and you choose to change it, you'll usually find it in all of the areas, that there's some digging to do in there. Absolutely. Thanks, Marco. Susie.
I think with me is just to not give myself such a hard time and just not have expectations, not feel disappointed if I don't meet my own expectations or others, I guess, and just try and relax in life a little bit more. I think that causes me, I'm not as bad as I used to be. I used to have really high nervous system that was very much like that. And so I'm a lot more chilled now, but I still think I can work on it a little bit more. That's probably why I get a bit of, not road rage, but I get frustrated in traffic because I'm sort of, somebody might be going a bit slow in front of me and I'm, wanting to, I don't know, if they're getting in my way or whatever. But yeah, I think that is just trying to relax in life a bit more and just be happy with what I do and where I'm at all the time.
Yeah. And, being gentle with ourselves is a very important thing. right? Because sometimes when you learn something about yourself, that thing that you learn can sometimes be a little unpleasant, right? And so you can be gentle with yourself and go, yes, I see you, and, you know, I'd prefer to change that. And be gentle on yourself that you actually choose that, because that takes a lot of courage. And be gentle on yourself that it may take time for you to make the changes that you're looking for, because it certainly has taken time to build you to the person you are now. So when you want to change it, it can take time. So yeah, be gentle and also be accountable, because the other end of that spectrum is you'll have people that'll say, well, that's just me, too bad. Okay, and that's the other end, is be gentle on the things that you're choosing to change, but also be accountable for yourself that, okay, that's clearly having less outcomes than I would like, and that may involve me shifting my thinking or shifting my response to things. And yeah, I agree, you are much calmer. Adrian.
Well, for me, I think it's about hopefully I remember this, trying to be not impulsive anymore, try to think of what will happen if I do this, do that, uh, how would it affect me, the people around me, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. So yeah, it has a knock-on effect. So how you are and how you think and how you behave has to do with your relationships and your social interactions, and you've developed an awareness of that. Awesome. Arlene.
Yes, I like seeing the two sides, the less and the more. It's a good awareness, just checking that out and going, oh yeah, slide into those arenas every now and again, particularly when out of sorts, under the weather, and you know, all those weakened times, and just the absolute power of being when I'm calm, I am able to deal with things so much more responsibly. So it's just right. I'm out of alignment. What can I do to get myself back in so that I can get on with life in a much better way for people, for myself and people around me?
Yeah. And I like your sliding, right? Because it is a sliding scale. This test that you're going to do, the little self-appraisal, it's going to give you a sliding scale. The reality is it'll give you some ideas, but we're sliding up and down all day long, right? Because sometimes we do things really well, even being agitated. I might, or you might be able to calm yourself down by having a glass of water, taking a few breaths. Sometimes that works. Great. I'm up one end of the scale. Sometimes my roll is way too fast for that to happen. And then I go, well, in that instance, I'm kind of back, you know, at the lower end. So it is a sliding scale, and recognizing that's awesome. Thanks, Arlene. And Jennifer, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. So I don't know what happened before. I got I dropped out anyway. So out of all the four pillars, I think the self-management is the one that stands out to me the most. And as far as the impulsive distraction, so I put that down to not getting enough sleep. So yeah, I'm the midnight snacker, or the can't get off certain things. It's a bit of escapism too, with lots of stuff that happens, life, family, all the things that are happening around you. You sort of have to switch off sometimes without doing it in a positive way, I suppose. Like, I should be a bit more mindful, I suppose, doing some more mindful practices, meditation, whatever it might be, rather than go to the TV to switch off. And then I realized, oh, gee, well, that was a waste of time. Didn't really, hasn't changed my life, but it's, I won't get those hours back again. So yeah, I think just realizing too that one aspect or one pillar will affect all the other pillars. In my case, I think, it has a flow-on effect. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And even, You know, we can look at self-management and say, well, actually, am I self-managing by controlling, distracting, whatever? Because they are all methods of self-management, right? And they are effective in one little instance. The issue is that when we're suppressing, it's still there. And even though we might have gone shopping or might have had a glass of wine or whatever it is, if we're managing ourselves in that way, there's still something to be managed. And that brings us back to that first pillar, which is self-awareness. And the question is, well, I'm feeling on a treadmill, you know, I've got this busy lifestyle, which, you know, yeah, everyone has whatever their busy lifestyle is. And what is it in there that keeps throwing me off, that I'm feeling a need to suppress or control or ignore or numb out or whatever it is? So yeah, you're absolutely right. They are interconnected. And sometimes when we're so busy, we have, let's say, less inspiration to really dig in, because maybe there are times when, yeah, we do need to just zone out in order to recover. It's when we're using that as a strategy all the time and we know it to be ineffective because we're going on that loop. Thanks, Jennifer. That was good. That was great. So we're right on time, and thank you everyone for giving up an hour of your public holiday. I hope the rest of your day was awesome as well. And next month, so you'll know, Mindshift Mondays are the first Monday of every month from 4 to 5. So same format, and if you've registered, you'll be able to join, or you'll also get a have access to the recording of this one. So thanks everyone, and have a lovely Monday afternoon.